My boyfriend thinks I should put up with his son's mistreatment of me because he's autistic. AITA for being ready to end the relationship? Story 1. This story begins with a woman who decides to enter into a relationship with a man who has an autistic son. From the start, she was willing to accept his situation, making an effort to understand and care for the young man, now 18, who behaves like a 12 or 13-year-old. Despite the challenges, she patiently supported him, developing maternal feelings toward her partner's son. However, life in this new family didn't turn out as she had imagined. The boyfriend's son, though grown, often acted rudely and disrespectfully toward her and even verbally abused his grandmother. He refused to work, took on no responsibilities, and demanded everything be given to him on his terms. Saddest of all, her boyfriend and his family seemed accustomed to his attitude, accepting his behavior with excessive tolerance. As time passed, she had her own child and faced severe postpartum depression, which made everything feel even heavier. She was truly hurt when the boyfriend's son yelled at her, calling her a terrible mother who abandoned her baby because she didn't want to care for him. His words cut deeply, leaving her feeling even more isolated and helpless in her new family. She repeatedly asked her boyfriend to intervene and help his son understand the truth. But he responded coldly, saying that his son wasn't raised properly from the beginning, and that she should just accept it if she wanted the relationship to continue. She realized that despite all her efforts, she couldn't be a good mother or partner in a situation where even her boyfriend didn't respect her. Her greatest heartache came when she understood that he only cared about keeping the peace between himself and his son. Disregarding her feelings, she often wondered if he truly loved her or if she was merely someone who had to put up with his son's rudeness because of his autism. And though she understood the impact of autism on the young man, she felt that no reason could justify constant disrespect and hostility. In the end, with a heavy heart, she decided to leave, taking her baby and seeking legal counsel to protect her rights. Though she still loved him, she knew that both she and her child needed a healthier environment, one where she could feel respected and free from the daily hurt. She left with the conviction that she was choosing the best path for herself and her child's future, seeking a new, more peaceful life, far from the chaos she had endured in that home. Story 2. The second story unfolds around a young woman who endured unimaginable trauma before finding refuge with her father. At a young age, she suffered years of abuse at the hands of her stepfather while living with her mother. This period left her broken and deeply scarred. By the time she was sent to live with her father, she was withdrawn, barely speaking, and had lost all desire to interact with anyone. She was alive, but she wasn't truly living. Socially, she kept everyone at arm's length, her heart guarded, and the only person she could tolerate any closeness with was her father. Her father became her rock during this challenging time, showing a kind of patience and dedication that would become the cornerstone of her healing journey. When she was plagued by night terrors, he was there to hold her hand or wrap her in a comforting embrace. He drove her to countless therapy sessions, made sure she was eating properly, and, on days when she would break down for no reason, he would hold her, telling her that everything would eventually be okay. Through these actions, he did more than offer physical support, he helped her rebuild her trust in humanity. However, their lives were complicated by an unspoken tension within the family. Her father was married, and she had a half-sister from this new marriage. Yet, there was always an undercurrent of resentment between her father and his wife, especially regarding her half-sister. What she didn't realize at the time was that her half-sister had told a dangerous lie to their stepmother, accusing her of inappropriate behavior. In reality, this false accusation stemmed from jealousy, as her half-sister resented the extra attention their father gave her while she was healing. The lie led to arguments between her father and stepmother, ultimately culminating in a decision that changed their lives. Her father chose her well-being over his marriage, opting to quietly move out with her to shield her from further harm and accusations. Years later, she learned the full story when her half-sister reached out, apologizing and admitting the lie she had told. The revelation left her with a mix of anger and sorrow, but mostly gratitude toward her father. She recognized the enormous sacrifice he had made for her, to give up his marriage so she could find peace and a fresh start. This newfound understanding deepened her respect for her father, who had quietly borne the weight of this decision without ever burdening her with the truth. She knew that, At that fragile stage in her life, learning about her half-sister's betrayal and her father's sacrifices could have completely shattered her. This revelation brought her a profound sense of appreciation. Her father had not only provided physical safety but had protected her emotionally as well, preserving her ability to recover without added turmoil. As she began to open up and trust people again, she realized the full extent of his devotion. He had allowed her to heal, move forward, and ultimately build a fulfilling life. Now, as a young adult, thriving in school, with friendships, and even a loving relationship, she reflected on the invaluable role her father had played in her life. She thought about whether or not she should bring up this past with him. Part of her wanted to express her gratitude directly, but another part of her felt that her father already understood without words. Above all, she cherished the bond they shared. A bond forged not by words but by the unwavering actions of a parent who had sacrificed everything so his child could heal and rediscover hope. The third story centers on a father who finds himself in an increasingly unsettling situation involving an old friend and his daughter. He had known this friend for over a decade, but they had gradually drifted apart until recently. When they reconnected, he welcomed this rekindled friendship, as it felt good to have someone familiar to talk to, especially as he was raising his 20-year-old daughter and 14-year-old son on his own since his wife had passed away. However, during recent visits, he began noticing something disturbing about the way his friend interacted with his daughter. At first, it was subtle. His friend would look at his daughter a bit too often during conversations or seem more engaged with her than with anyone else in the room. The father brushed it off as a friendly interaction, not wanting to jump to conclusions, especially since this friend had known his daughter since she was little. But the unease grew with each visit, as his friend seemed fixated on her, laughing harder at her jokes and directing his attention toward her, even when the conversation was directed elsewhere. The father's concerns turned into alarm when his daughter confided in him, reluctantly revealing a disturbing encounter. After one of their recent visits, his friend had appeared outside her workplace unexpectedly, offering her a ride home. Trusting him as her father's friend, she accepted, but the ride quickly turned uncomfortable. He made comments about how much she had grown, noting she was maturing nicely. Then he reached over, touching her leg, and his gaze lingered on her uncomfortably. As they neared home, he handed her his number, encouraging her to call him anytime, even subtly implying more than a simple ride home. By the time they arrived, he grabbed her arm, asking for a hug and lingering in an unsettling embrace. After hearing this, the father was horrified, feeling as though he had unwittingly put his daughter in harm's way by trusting someone he had considered a close friend. Fueled by anger and protectiveness, he confronted his friend directly, demanding that he cease all contact with his daughter and family. His friend initially responded dismissively, claiming that his daughter was an adult and that he hadn't crossed any lines since she never directly told him to stop. But the father didn't let him off the hook, sending screenshots of his friend's inappropriate messages to serve as proof of his behavior and to sever ties definitively. Determined to ensure his daughter's safety, the father took additional measures. He contacted her workplace, requesting that someone accompany her to the bus stop, and arranged for himself or her grandparents to pick her up whenever possible. Although he briefly considered confronting his friend physically, he decided against it, feeling that ensuring his daughter's well-being was a far more productive approach. Reflecting on this painful experience, the father recognized a more profound lesson for himself and his daughter. He spoke with her about personal boundaries and how society often pressures women to remain polite, even when they feel uncomfortable. He reminded her that she had every right to assert her discomfort without guilt or concern for others' feelings, reinforcing that her safety and well-being came first. In the end, the father found solace in knowing that he had acted decisively to protect his daughter and that she felt supported and safe. He had lost a friend but gained a renewed sense of purpose as a parent, standing as a shield for his daughter and ensuring that she would never have to face such a situation alone. The experience left a mark on both of them, but it strengthened their bond and underscored the value of trust, awareness, and the courage to stand up for one's loved ones in the face of betrayal. WIBTAH for telling my boyfriend that him being a Trump supporter gives me the ick. It all began with a spark of excitement and curiosity. A new love budding in the heart of a young woman who was on the edge of discovering just how far personal values can stretch in the name of love. She was 20, vibrant, ambitious, and new to serious relationships. He was 21, equally enthusiastic about their connection, and in their shared time together, they had a lot of fun. Yet, the one detail she didn't anticipate was that, soon, the perfect relationship she had thought she found would come up against a wall so thick it was nearly impenetrable. A deep-seated conflict over their beliefs and values. The woman in our story, let's call her Elena, grew up in a world far from the one she now inhabited. As a young immigrant, she left her homeland with her family, seeking a place where they could live without the constant fear of political unrest, economic hardship, and personal insecurity. But her journey to this new life was met with numerous challenges. And she quickly understood that some people here might still see her as an outsider. Over the years, she faced prejudice and cold, hurtful remarks, often from people who didn't understand her story or the painful path her family had taken to build a better life. The echoes of these experiences remained etched in her mind as she grew older and developed her own beliefs, largely shaped by her experiences of inequality and resilience. Then she met Adam, a charming and seemingly well-rounded young man who, like her, had lived his life largely unaware of what it meant to be an outsider in your own home. Their initial encounters were marked by laughter, shared interests, and a deep curiosity about each other's perspectives. For months, they danced through the honeymoon phase, exploring mutual interests, learning each other's quirks, and imagining their future together. It wasn't until they found themselves watching a television show together, an innocent pastime, really, that a simple comment brought the previously unspoken reality crashing into focus. Adam, somewhat offhandedly, made a comment in agreement with a character who spouted a popular misconception about reproductive rights. To Elena, the comment was so jarring it stopped her mid-sentence. She gently questioned him, hoping it was just a misunderstanding. But Adam doubled down, brushing off her concerns and casually admitting he didn't see things the same way she did. This was her first inkling that their relationship might be built on a shaky foundation. From there, Elena began noticing that her boyfriend, Adam, seemed to align with beliefs that made her feel, quite literally, unsafe. He made dismissive comments about immigrants, offhandedly joked about serious allegations, and seemed to support policies and ideas that clashed with the very core of her identity and values. It was as if he couldn't or wouldn't see the ways his words affected her. The more he talked, the more she felt her world and his were worlds apart. As they broached heavier subjects like immigration and women's rights, the unsettling feeling inside her grew stronger, a feeling she came to call the ick. But it wasn't simply a matter of difference in politics or preference, to Elena. This wasn't like debating a favorite sports team or the best type of cuisine. These were core values, fundamental beliefs about human rights, equality, and respect. Her experiences had taught her to be wary of individuals who held such divisive views because, too often, these views had manifested as threats to her well-being and the well-being of those she loved. She had learned to protect herself from prejudice and to value those who welcomed her presence, not people who questioned her right to be here. In a moment of introspection, Elena began to ask herself hard questions. Was she willing to overlook these differences for the sake of a relationship? Could she truly feel safe, valued, and respected with someone who held values that contradicted her own so deeply? Or would she be forever haunted by the nagging feeling that she was compromising too much of herself in the process? Seeking clarity, she spoke to her family, hoping for support. However, their response surprised her. They urged her to look past his political views, insisting that love could, and should, transcend such differences. Why let politics ruin a good relationship? They would ask. Yet, to Elena, this wasn't simply politics, this was her sense of safety, her identity, her life experiences. It was the essence of who she was. Determined to understand his perspective, she tried to communicate her concerns to Adam. She explained the specific ways his beliefs made her feel vulnerable, especially given her background and personal history. She asked him to imagine what it might be like to live in her shoes, constantly vigilant against the hostility and discrimination she and her family had faced. But Adam's response was evasive. He dismissed her fears, suggesting that she was being overly sensitive. that she needed to separate emotions from facts. Each time she opened up, his words seemed to invalidate her experiences, to push her away just a little more. The tension reached its peak one evening after a long, emotional conversation about immigration and social justice. Adam insisted that his views were fair, practical, and had nothing to do with hating anyone, they were just beliefs. He said, aimed at protecting his country. But to Elena, these were not benign beliefs, they were harmful, exclusionary, and at odds with the inclusivity she valued. She began to realize that while he could compartmentalize these beliefs as theoretical, she didn't have that luxury. For her, these issues were personal, they were her reality. At last, Elena came to the painful decision that she couldn't continue in the relationship. It wasn't easy, breaking up never is. She loved him deeply, but she had to love herself more. Her experiences and values were too important to set aside, and she knew she deserved someone who would not only understand but also share her respect for these values. She met with him one final time, explaining her reasons with honesty and compassion. She expressed that this was not about hating him or resenting him but about acknowledging that their worldviews were fundamentally incompatible. Adam, perhaps predictably, tried to convince her otherwise. He professed his love, insisted that their differences could be overcome, and asked her to ignore these small issues. But Elena had made up her mind. She understood that compatibility isn't just about chemistry or mutual affection, it's about shared values, a sense of mutual respect, and an ability to truly understand and honor each other's identities. With a heavy heart, she walked away. In the aftermath of their breakup, Elena took time to reflect on the experience. Understanding the lessons it had taught her, she realized that while compromise is crucial in any relationship, some values are too fundamental to sacrifice. She came to see that standing up for herself and her values was not only an act of self-respect but also a testament to the respect she hoped to find in her future relationships. This experience gave Elena a newfound appreciation for the strength it takes to walk away when love is not enough. She shared her story to encourage others facing similar situations to remember that their values and experiences matter. Ultimately, she learned that love must be built on a foundation of shared respect, understanding, and compatibility, without which even the strongest affection may crumble. In the end, Elena's story is a reminder that being true to oneself is not only possible but necessary in the pursuit of a healthy, fulfilling relationship. Love may bridge many divides, but only when it honors the full humanity of both partners. I was discriminated against all my life because of my golden child, sister. Finally, I got my sweet revenge on my wedding day. In this story, we will delve into the life of a protagonist who, trapped in a family dynamic that cherished one sister while dismissing and diminishing the other, faced emotional trials that many would find unimaginable. Born into a family where favoritism wasn't merely subtle, but an all-consuming part of her life, the protagonist spent her childhood and young adult years overshadowed by a golden child, sister, her parents' pride and joy. This golden child label became a shackle around her existence, imposing on her not only a lack of acknowledgement but a consistent erosion of her self-worth. Growing up, the protagonist faced a recurring message: no matter how hard she tried, she could never compete with her sister's privileged position. While some families try to hide their favoritism, here, it was open and constant. For the protagonist, birthdays were emblematic of her plight. Year after year, she would eagerly await a cake that catered to her preferences, a token of acknowledgement for her own tastes and personality. Yet, every birthday cake would be made to her sister's liking. Her favorite flavors were ignored in favor of the sister's, which to an innocent child symbolized her parents' unwillingness to see her as her own person. This extended far beyond birthdays. While other kids spent holidays enjoying trips chosen with love for everyone's enjoyment, their family's outings were always based on the sister's whims. Every choice, every meal, every decision seemed skewed toward a person who was, ironically, already favored beyond measure. In a poignant memory, the protagonist recalled how her sister's accusations against her were taken at face value by her parents. On one occasion, her sister accused her of stealing a toy, a baseless accusation intended only to stir trouble. The parents instantly scolded her, punishing her without even listening to her defense. Yet, when she provided proof of her innocence, they dismissed it as unnecessary trouble. This was just one of countless incidents where her voice, her truth, was buried beneath their favoritism. As she grew older, the gap between the protagonist and her sister widened, manifesting in their social lives and friendships. Unlike her sister, who gradually became alienated from others due to her domineering and self-centered nature, the protagonist managed to forge meaningful friendships. School offered her a brief reprieve, a place where she wasn't the other sister. However, this sliver of happiness was quickly tainted as her sister began to meddle. Whenever she tried to spend time with friends, her sister would intervene, accusing her of neglecting family duties or of being a bad influence. The parents, quick to support the sister's claims, would restrict her social outings, pushing her further into isolation. They would say things like, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" or, "Family time is important, maybe you should learn from her dedication." To her, these words were weighted shackles, tying her down to a fate she hadn't chosen. Her cousin, a confidant who also witnessed the family dynamics, would often console her. The cousins would meet at family gatherings, and it was there that the protagonist could finally breathe, free from her parents' judgment. But these moments of solace were brief, as her parents soon restricted her involvement even in family gatherings under the pretext that she was getting too close to others. Her sister, aware of the attention she was losing to her sibling, would make up stories about her, further widening the gap between the protagonist and the rest of the family. High school brought new challenges, especially in her attempts at forming romantic relationships. For most teens, dating is a rite of passage, a thrilling exploration of independence. For her, however, it was just another avenue where her sister would intrude. When she brought her first boyfriend home, her sister saw it as an opportunity to belittle her. The sister dressed provocatively and flirted openly with him, attempting to paint her sibling as undesirable by comparison. When confronted by the protagonist, her parents dismissed her concerns, accusing her of being jealous of her sister's confidence. Time and again, her romantic pursuits were disrupted by the sister's attempts to seduce the boyfriends or by her accusations that painted the protagonist as morally questionable. Her parents reinforced this narrative, often forbidding her from dating to protect the family's image. For them, the golden child could do no wrong, and any boy who chose her sister was painted as making the right choice. As graduation approached, the protagonist saw education as her lifeline. She excelled academically, working tirelessly to secure scholarships. She hoped that her hard work would be acknowledged, that perhaps her parents might see her worth in the realm of academics if nowhere else. Yet, when she revealed her college acceptance and need for financial support, her parents informed her they had exhausted their funds on her sister's education. Her dreams were, once again, seen as secondary, dispensable. Determined not to let their refusal dictate her life, she turned to external scholarships, eventually securing a full ride at a reputable institution. Her parents were taken aback, but before they could intervene, she publicly shared the news on social media, earning the support of extended family members, with her family unable to talk her out of college without drawing public scrutiny. They had no choice but to let her go. Years later, as she found love and began planning her wedding, the protagonist was hopeful for a moment of joy unmarred by her family's interference. Her fiancé, a supportive partner who had been with her through her family's struggles, encouraged her to make the wedding about their union and joy. However, her family had other plans. The parents, still loyal to the sister's demands, insisted that the sister walk down the aisle in a wedding dress. They argued that, since she wasn't married yet, it would be a nice experience for her. This shocking request, designed to divert attention away from the protagonist, was the final straw. With the help of her fiancé, she devised a plan. They hired security, making sure that her sister would not be allowed into the venue in her wedding dress. On the day, as guests arrived and whispers spread about the sister's attempted intrusion, her family's elaborate scheme was exposed for all to see. Her parents and sister faced public embarrassment, the culmination of years of deceit and favoritism crumbling before an audience. The protagonist finally experienced the joy of a day centered on her happiness, untainted by her family's manipulations. In the years that followed, she reflected on her journey and how, despite the pain, she emerged stronger and more resolute. She realized that her worth was never dependent on her family's opinion. This story serves as a powerful reminder that, while family can be a source of love, sometimes one must seek out chosen family, friends, mentors, or a partner who truly values them. The protagonist's resilience is a beacon for anyone trapped in a toxic family dynamic, showing that while escape may be difficult, it is possible. Through courage, a sense of self-worth, and the support of those who truly care, one can rebuild a life of love, respect, and fulfillment. This tale speaks not only to those struggling with family issues but to everyone who has faced the silent battles of feeling unseen. It's a testament that true happiness often comes not from the approval of others but from the hard-won acceptance of oneself.